Welcome to the Golf Improvement Podcast, episode 102.
Welcome to the podcast for golf lovers and enthusiasts who are looking to take their games to new heights. Dedicated to custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice to improve your golf game. This is the Golf Improvement Podcast with your host, Tony Wright.
Hello, this is Tony Wright from Game Improvement Golf in Oak Ridge, Tennessee with the Golf Improvement Podcast, dedicated to sharing useful information on custom club fitting, short game improvement, and effective practice techniques, bringing you the custom club fitting experience of your life and lower scores always. I first met Tony Curro, owner of True Fit Custom Clubs, about 10 years ago at an AGCP roundtable event. And so it was fun to recently find out that he was honored as the 2018 International Club Makers Guild North American Club Maker of the Year. I was pleased he agreed to do this interview with me, and I know you'll be glad to hear what he has to say. Hello, this is Tony Wright with the Golf Improvement Podcast, and it's a pleasure today to talk with a friend, Tony Curro, who is a custom club fitter with True Fit Custom Clubs in Latham, New York. As Tony told me before we started, he's a really busy person right now, but he was recognized by Golf Digest as a top 100 custom club fitter in 2015 and 2016. But more recently, he was honored to be selected as the International Club Makers Guild 2018 North American Club Maker of the Year, and he received that award at the PGA show in Florida in January. So, Tony, thanks for doing this, and we're going to have a good time talking about some of the things that you're doing in your custom fitting business.
Thank you, Tony.
Well, it's great. I always like to start out by letting people talk a little bit about their story. And you, in your case, how did you first become interested in becoming a custom fitter? And also, some of the really important influences that helped you become good at your craft.
Sure. It's kind of a long journey that has taken place with me. I was this is a second career for me, full time now. But for 35 and a half years, I was a school teacher and coach. And one thing that I always found in coaching was that having good equipment was half the battle in being successful on the field. And that couldn't be more true in the golf business.
Yeah.
And so when my coaching career was over, being the type A personality that I am, I needed something to fill that void. Got started just fooling around, got interested in the game of golf late in life. I was about 35 when I started playing, regularly, and found that, number one, golf equipment's pretty darn expensive, and number two, the stuff that I was buying wasn't really working. So got interested, started surfing the web and locked into this company called Dynacraft, where you could buy your own heads and kind of, make your own clubs, so to speak. And it was crude, the beginning was really crude, but, I really enjoyed doing that. I've always been a bit of a tinkerer. Even when I was coaching, I would build a lot of my own equipment for practice. So that kind of dovetailed into an interest in building my own clubs. And then, I went to the old PCS. I went to a building seminar, and then a fitting seminar, and then a couple of the AGCP seminars, and have been kind of sharpening the saw every year through the ICG and, some of the things that are offered through the ICG with the webinars. So it's always like the educator I was, I'm always learning.
There are many people that in this thing that we do that just have a desire to keep learning. And I think that's one of the things that helps, because you can't. There's no overnight successes.
Absolutely not. And with the amount of product that is available to us as custom fitters, it's quite it's quite a monumental task to have a working knowledge of all your equipment, or all of your product, I should say.
Yeah. Now, I forget. I should remember this, but I can't remember what you coached. Was it like baseball or something, or a whole range of sports?
I was a head high school baseball coach at a place called Waterville High School in upstate New York for 11 years, and we were fortunate enough to win 2 state championships during my tenure there. And then for 9 years, I was an assistant at the Division I level at Siena College.
Oh, wow.
So that was a great experience. In terms of professionalism and, growing my career, which, I thought for a while, I would probably, parlay that Division I assistant's position into a full-time gig at the college level. But, things have a way of happening in life. And my wife and I had a baby that was born with autism. So with that said, having a special needs child is a 24/7, 365 responsibility. And the Division I level is not kind. It's a very competitive level. You're constantly on the road, whether it be at games or recruiting. And I needed to be more of a dad. I needed to be home. So the decision was made to get out of coaching, to spend more time with my son. Because my wife is also a professional. She's a family court attorney. So she puts in, grueling hours also. So somebody needs to be home. Somebody needed to be around, and I was the one who decided to kind of do a little bit different planning for my career. And but this was great because at the time I was still teaching. I could do this part time and on the weekends and the summers. So it was really good. But it's gone from good to great since I've been doing it full time. And so I guess that's my story.
There you go. Well, and that does probably sort of segue into the second question I was going to ask, because I had remembered you had a mobile fitting van at one point. I don't think you have that anymore, but that probably is connected with how you tried to, with all the things that are going on in your life and made it easier to do some of the things that you do. Talk a little bit about that experience of having a mobile van, because not everybody gets into that world of doing fitting, I guess, right?
Right. Well, it was a great, it was a great little workshop. I literally had a workshop on wheels. And I would touch down at a certain site, and I had 4 sites. I had a place in Manchester, Vermont. I had a place at the Cranwell Resort in Lenox, or in Lee, Massachusetts, and then I had 2 sites in the Capital District here. And I would usually leave about 6 o'clock in the morning. If I was going out of state, that was about an hour drive. And then it would take me, with all the equipment I had, it would take me an hour and a half to set up, plus an 8-hour day on the range. So my 8-hour days were 13-hour days. Yeah. Between, setup, breakdown, driving here, driving home. And, that's, and I would hit some weather sometimes, in the summers in the Berkshires and in Vermont, you get some mean thunderstorms. I went through 3 canopies that got knocked down by thunderstorms and just shredded. But I was always very cognizant of when I would see the dark clouds to get the important things out of the weather. So my computers and my launch monitor were always the first things I packed up. Everything else was expendable. Yeah. To get that inside get that inside the trailer, and then I had everything else was on wheels. Wow. So I wheel it out or wheel it in, and I had a cart that had probably 200 shafts in it that was on wheels, and so a little bit of that tinkering, I was able to kind of design some things to make it a little bit easier to set up and break down. But those were grueling days. Those were long days.
Yeah. But I'll bet, too, that that's probably one of the things that's helped you, because we talked before we started that you're very, very busy. But being able to make so many connections because you did go to those 4 places probably has really paid off. I mean, those people are probably connecting with you a lot, I'm guessing, right?
Oh, they are, and the nice thing about, what we do is people, I don't do any advertising. So everything is word of mouth, and golfers, when they're happy, they tell other golfers, and when they're not happy, they tell other golfers, so, I heard a long time ago, I was at a little seminar, a business seminar, and they said, when people are happy, they'll tell one other person. When they're unhappy, they'll tell 10 other people. So, we there's a fine line between, people being happy and not being happy. And a lot of times, there are things that are beyond our control, and we could have done a great job, but, someone may lay off for a little while and their swing has changed, and they're not quite hitting the stuff we built for them as well as they used to, and so there's a real fine line between success and not being successful, and golfers are very fickle.
Oh, yeah.
They're very committed to their gear. So a lot, if I do a good job, I usually see those people back.
Yeah. Now, what am I really? I think it's a standard question, but it's always interesting to hear what people say. What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions and misunderstandings that golfers have about, what I would call true custom club fitting? Because almost everybody that sells golf clubs wants to say that they do custom fitting these days, but there's custom and there's what is really custom, in my view. So kind of curious about your take on that in terms of the people you see.
Well, a lot of times, obviously most golfers have the retail mindset, where they just come in here and they're like, well, I'm a stiff. Well, I'm a regular. And, or they'll come in and say, well, I know that the shaft is the most important part of the club. And, so you need to really re-educate people and say, wait a minute, it's a combination of shaft head and grip, and weight and flex and, shaft profile. Because we're going to match that shaft profile with what you really need in your game, whether it may be to lower your ball flight or to flight the ball more, so it's really an education process. And when people go through it, they're like, wow, I never realized it was this technical. And they see with the help, I mean, in the past when we first started, we had the Velocity or the,
I had one
of
those. I remember that. Right.
Yeah, and that all I did was spit numbers. And now with the flight scope, and I'll be getting an X3 in a couple weeks. The visuals that come out of those fittings are just, they're tremendous and they're spot on. And the whether you're fitting in or out, those numbers are transferable from in to out most times. So people are astonished that, we're able to improve them that much with just by tweaking their equipment.
Yeah. And you started to talk about it a little bit, but, one of the mentalities, you probably don't do many 20-minute fittings, right?
Mine are usually about an hour 15.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Somewhere in that kind of range. I mean, it takes time to find the right combinations that really matter and really work, and sometimes people get tired too. So
Correct.
Evaluate
Correct.
that.
Yeah.
You got to kind of watch how that goes. Yeah.
especially early in the year. You know, this time of year now, when people haven't played up here in upstate New York, most of them, you know, if they're diehards, they played a little bit into November, but you know, most of the people are done September, October. So that's a long stretch of layoff, even for really hardy guys or gals.
Yeah.
And you know, so the early fittings are tough, you know, because they have, you know, they're a lot more inconsistent. So you really have to work to get to something that may be really beneficial for these people, for these golfers. And you know, it's more, the best fittings that I have are in October. No, October, November.
How interesting. Yeah, I would have never, but you know, considering where you are, you know, it's a little different here in Tennessee, where most people can not always play all around the year. This year's been really bad, but nowhere near like I have relatives in Rochester, so I understand what's going on.
You understand?
There, right? I understand what's going on up there.
And they get a lot more snow than we get in Albany, believe me. They're right in the snow belt. We're kind of outside the reach of the snow belt. So, you know, we get snow, but we don't get it like that.
Yeah. Well, you know, we touched on this earlier. You know, there aren't people that are, in my view, overnight successes. But what would you say, you know, if you had to characterize some of the most important knowledge skills that you've had that have really helped you kind of develop to the next level, what would you say those are? And maybe some of that comes related to your coaching skills too, because you have to be an observer and things like that.
Without a doubt. You know, early on in my, you know, in this whole endeavor, I had a couple gentlemen that were so gracious to me. There was a gentleman by the name of Dick Bogdan and Bill Brady. They opened up a place in Schenectady, which is probably 8-10 miles from where I live in Latham. It was called Oak Ridge Golf Clubs. It was a custom fitting studio. They had 3 hitting bays, the old Velocity in there. They had glue-in clubs. You know, they did a lot of business with Washan. And towards the end of their tenure, they brought on a TaylorMade account. But, you know, those guys were so gracious to me because they were really knowledgeable guys, number one. And number two, they allowed me to intern there for 6 months. So I saw how they did business. And I saw how, you know, and they would have area pros would come in and use their bays to do lessons and things like that. So I developed a real good relationship with some of the area pros that were, you know, connected with their business. But to be able to kind of firsthand see how it's done, and to see the successes that they had just convinced me that this is a good thing. You know, I'm really gonna get into this wholeheartedly because what they're doing is really good stuff. And the other person that's really been a wonderful influence on me, and I've kind of copied his business model, is Frank Viola at the Ace of Clubs. Yeah. Frank has convinced me that, you know, the best way for me anyways in that business model is to go OEM. You know, for some guys, you know, that's not a good thing. But for me it was, because, and that's an expensive way to go because there's buy-ins every year with the OEMs. So you need to hit those minimums. And that's a gamble. That's a real gamble. And I've been, you know, blessed and fortunate enough to be able to hit the minimums, you know, and above. So, you know, and the other thing that I have going for me is I'm really kind of in a pocket here in upstate New York where there's really no competition. Nobody does it the custom way. Nobody does custom fittings. So I'll draw people in from as far away as Syracuse and Binghamton, which is 2.5 hours away from me. And I've actually had some people from Rochester, which is 3. So I have really a sphere of influence, at least, you know, north through to Canada, west out to Rochester, Buffalo, and east to Frank in Boston. So, you know, I have a 3-hour circumference of no competition, which really helps when you're doing this type of thing. I mean, there's dicks in Golf Galaxy, but they don't do it like we do it.
But now and as you're talking about OEMs, talk about sort of the range of sort of retrofitting that you actually do with them too, because I'm sure it's much more than just that the things you did with Bill Grady, and I remember that name, and folks, how you integrated that with doing some of the OEM things that you do.
Well, the first thing I did was I made sure that I had head-only accounts with those guys. And that's a process. So, I have head-only accounts with TaylorMade and Callaway and PXG, working on a head-only account with Mizuno, and I have Mura. So I have 5 head accounts. And then, I have Acura, I have Oban, I have Mitsubishi Chemical or Rayon, Mitsubishi Rayon. I have Valix, I have Aerotech, I have KBS, I'm a True Temper fitting, performance fitting center. I have Nippon, and I am bringing on within the next couple weeks Graphite Design, and also in April the Sebastian from TPT is coming to visit me to see if there's a possibility. And that stuff that's
a fascinating topic. I don't know how far we want to go into that, but they're basically a $500 shaft, but
they are.
But I'm sure there are folks that will think that that's something a discriminating thing in terms of performance. So it'll be interesting to find out what your experience is there later. So.
Well, I have a couple of 500s in here now with the RPGs from Acura and the T1100s from Project X.
Yeah.
So, those are $500 price point shafts. And 3 weeks ago I sold 3 RPG shafts. So, if guys are seeing numbers, and, I kind of, I delved into it, I kind of put a feeler out through John Wade, who was just hook, line, and sinker with these TPT shafts. He's showing me fitting comparisons of literally a third dispersion with these shafts, and I'm like, wow, is this real stuff? And then he's showing me, how much gain and distance. I mean, with really, really good players. So I think there's something to it. And whether I can consistently make it work and hit numbers that they need to have in order to make it work on their end, it remains to be seen. But again, I didn't know if PXG would sell here.
Yeah,
and it has.
Right. Yeah. Well, we started out talking about you getting the award from the ICG this year. Talk a little bit about the application process for that, and also, if you will, I haven't done any tests in a while, like those kind of things, but to me, there's always something that you learn for yourself from doing that makes you a little better too. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Well, the first thing was I needed to get certified by the ICG. So I took the test, the club makers test, and doing that, you go over a lot of the old stuff that you learned, whether it be in the Dynacraft books or the Wishon book, in terms of club making and club fitting. So that was truly a refresher course. It's an open book test. You have 2 hours to do it, and it's a comprehensive test to your knowledge. So the first step in that award process was getting certified, which I did back in December, and then you needed to do a 45-minute video, and they had 9 questions. So you needed to address every one of those 9 areas of club fitting and club making. So my niece, who is she's in advertising, so she came in and did the video for me, and she did all the editing. thank God, because she did a great job on that. And, I was nominated, and to my surprise, I won.
But the video then almost becomes, in a way, kind of like a certification exercise too, right? Because you got to kind of think on your feet about, of course you can, I guess you can, modify it as you go along, but you have to think through what the questions were and stuff in terms of
Well,
what
true.
to say. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to establish credibility with the committee that you don't really know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I do it a little differently in here, because most club fitters, they use, they'll use oscillation. They measure shaft flex by CPMs, where I use a machine called the Flex Master, and that's how I learned this trade on the Flex Master, which, thanks to Russ Ryden, is a deflection machine. I measure by deflection. So if you can think about a digital deflection board, where you're deflecting shafts, and then it's measured on a pounds of pull digital scale. So you're deflecting a shaft 6 inches or 8 inches, depending whether it be a iron shaft or a wood shaft. And then there's a sliding scale for the length, and it comes back as a digital number. So everything that's done on that FlexMaster, we flex at the butt level and tip trim to length, where with oscillation you tip trim to flex and butt trim to length. So it's the opposite.
Yeah, interesting. But sort of the performance of the shaft tends to be a little different as you do it than if you're doing it the other way. Well,
yeah. And the other thing is that, when you're looking at the butt deflection, you're also, not only are you matching a customer to the correct flex via the Flex Master, but you also have to pick shafts that are going to deliver, that have the profile that's going to deliver the ball flight that person needs, or wants. And the other thing that it does is it has 2 ball bearings that the shaft fits through. They're circular ball bearings, so it literally spines the shaft as you deflect it.
Yeah.
So that soft spine pops up to the top, and so you find that soft spine as you're flexing the shaft, and then you orientate the shaft from the soft spine.
Yeah. I've never worked with a Flex Master. Maybe we'll have to do a discussion about that sometime, or at least I'll have to talk about it offline.
It's a great old machine.
Yeah.
It really is a great machine, and I'm fortunate to have 2 of them. I had 3.
Oh wow!
But I sold one. I sold one to Ronnie Smith down in where's Ronnie, in Arkansas?
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sold one to Ronnie Smith, because he was interested in it, and he loves it. He loves it. It's it takes probably 25 minutes to flex a set of shafts, where with CPM you can nibble. You can take hours to flex a set of shafts, doing it with the with a CPM machine. So it's a quicker way. It's the way I've done it. All of my demo shafts are based on the Flex Master, so they all have a numerical flex to them. So it's just a different way of doing it in terms of fitting.
But you made it work, so there you go.
I have made it work.
Yeah. Well, talk a little bit, as we're getting kind of to the end, talk a little bit about some of your kind of favorite success stories with people that you've worked with, whether it's somebody really good, really beginner, just tell me all about those.
One of my customers, Jim Cott, who played in the big leagues for 21 years and won 16 Gold Gloves. He's a single-digit handicap. In fact, he is the only person I know who shot his age on a Monday from the left side, because he's left-handed, and then on a Tuesday from the right side. So he plays both right and left-handed.
Yeah.
And I built him a set of mirrors from the left side and a set of mirrors from the right side. So he shot his age using my equipment from both sides of the tee, which is really, really interesting. He's just as wonderful a person as he is on television. He's equally that person in real life. He's just a pleasure to work with, a load of wonderful stories. And being an old baseball coach, we have an automatic connection there.
Yeah.
So, and when he comes in, he'll come into the shop, depending on the year, once, maybe twice a year, because he does summer up in Manchester, Vermont. He lives in Florida during the wintertime, but he lives in Vermont during the summertime. And so he's about an hour from me. And, he'll stop in because when he does games for MLB Network, a lot of times he'll fly out of Albany Airport. And my shop is like a half a mile from the airport. So he'll stop in and, we love to talk. And, when he's coming through to Cooperstown, he'll give me a buzz and, we'll have coffee or, we'll have lunch. So it's real neat to be sitting there having coffee with a celebrity.
Yeah. Wow.
and I also have a gal that is now a freshman at William and Mary on a golf scholarship, and her first tournament of the year, which was in the fall, she finished 8th. And we put her in a set of Apex irons with Valix, 873 shafts, 873 stiff shafts with, and we put a 160 FX driver shaft in her driver, and we put her in Mura K grind wedges with KBS Tour 90 shafts in them because she wanted them a little bit heavier,
right.
And so 90% of her bag, and I put her in an Edel putter. So 90% of her bag was built here, and she's doing quite well. She's just a dynamic girl. She's got a great swing, and she's a very talented girl. But apart from that, she's just a super nice person and extremely smart, and she's going to do well in life, whether she plays golf or not.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to jump back to the Jim Cutt thing for a minute because just something popped in my head. Are his clubs a little different from the left and the right side?
They are, actually.
I mean, I'm curious about what the difference is because, and on your site you say, no two fittings are the same. So
Right.
Talk a little about that a little bit.
It's funny, from the left side, we put him in the Acura I-Series 90s.
Yeah.
But from the right side, he likes them a little bit heavier, and we put him in the 123 regulars.
Huh.
So the difference is really the weight of the shafts from either side. Being a natural left-hander, he really, he likes a lighter shaft because he has a little bit more control from the left side.
Yeah.
But he swings it a little bit harder from the right side, believe it or not. And so, that extra weight feels good to him from the right side. So that's primarily the biggest difference. And obviously the lie angles from either side are different.
Yeah.
Because he's delivering the club to the ball a little differently from either side. But boy, you want to talk about talent and athleticism.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's 78 now, Jim, and he's still. I mean, he looks like he's about 60, 61, 59. He's one of these guys that he's about 6'6". So. We're looking at 3/4 over standard lengthwise for him, and but he's just so athletic, and the difference between a professional athlete and the rest of us.
Yeah.
It's just a different level of athleticism, even at 78 years old.
Well, it's fascinating to share the difference in the clubs, though, too. Because you just can't assume something, right? I mean,
correct. Yeah. Oh, no. And we've painstakingly going after it and our fittings, and he's in such great shape that as you mentioned earlier, sometimes people get tired. Jim doesn't get tired.
yeah
and usually the results are real quick. I mean, you can tell they're really true numbers that you're getting when you do a fitting with him, because he's really, really consistent in delivering the club head to the ball. So it's kind of easy, actually. He's easy to fit.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Well, this has been great today, Tony. But I'm going to let you have the final word at the end and talk a little bit about any specific recommendations for golfers. Maybe something a little out of the box that they wouldn't think about, but if not, that's fine. Related to helping them play their best.
Well, obviously we're in this business, to help golfers, and I see it on a daily basis. How being fit correctly, not your cart fitting, and nothing wrong with a cart fitting, believe me, if that works for you, but having the ability to have really consistent aftermarket product on the wall that people can test, and having really good numbers, meaning having a really good launch system, which the Flight Scope gives you, is critical. It's critical to playing better golf. And people don't think equipment matters. They're living in the 50s and 60s, and maybe not even then, because Arnie always tinkered with his stuff. So it's I guess having the ability to have really good visuals and really good numbers sent back to our customers just emphasizes the fact of how critical their equipment is, and having good equipment in your hands. If you want to play better, if you want to play consistent, it's critical. It's critical. Yeah. And we're getting a lot of good vibe from the PGA, and a lot of these people like Caney who are now on either Sirius Radio or whatever, on the Golf Channel radio. They're pumping up custom fitting, get fit, and that coupled with the fact that retail golf is really on the decline, because you see all these stores closing. I mean, around here we had a Golf Galaxy, they closed. Dick's has scaled back their golf offerings. So it's us. It's us that are left to carry the torch, and we're doing a great job of it. And the word is out, because even though I'm a one-man show, I'm busy as heck here. Yeah. And it's great. It's great because we have people that have a platform are singing the praises of custom fitting, and that in and of itself is a great thing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, and thanks for the entire interview today. So, I'll put links in the show notes to where people can find you. But they're finding you, aren't they? So that's good. Well, Tony, again, thanks for taking the time to do this with me today, and I look forward to getting to listen to it again when I get it produced. So.
Thank you so much, Tony. This is great. This is great.
Taking your game to new heights. www.gameimprovementgolf.com.
Well, Tony, thanks for sharing some of your club fitting experiences and knowledge in this interview. And as we discussed, you, like almost everyone I know that's in this business, have not been an overnight success, but you're really having some great results and things you're doing to help golfers. So if you're near to Tony and TrueFit Custom Clubs in Schenectady, New York, consider getting in touch with him if you need a true custom club fitting. I put a link to his website in the show notes. Well, that's it for today. And get ready for this next one. I'm really excited that Bob Litwin, author of Live the Best Story of Your Life, will share with me and all of you some of his tremendous insights and information from his book. It's much more than a process for improving your game. I'm honored to get to interview Bob. See you in 2 weeks.
Game Improvement Golf, your source of information and inspiration to become an exceptional golfer now. www.gameimprovementgolf.com